guest, Vani Kola, was an entrepreneur for 22 years in Silicon Valley. In 2006, she decided to set up Kalaari Capital to help entrepreneurs set up world-class, high-value, legacy enterprises. Today, I'm here to find out what it takes to profitably invest in game-changing startups. You're watching Pathbreakers. I am Neha Bothra. This is the first of a two-part conversation with Vani Kola, in which we talk about what it takes to navigate the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur to build legacy organizations. Welcome to Pathbreakers, Vani. I'm so happy to have you on our show. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here, and you've been doing path-breaking work yourself.
Thank you so much for saying so, Vani. Let me start by asking you, what does it take to be Vani Kola?
Being myself?
Yes.
These are the kind of questions that are always hard to answer. So I approach anything I approach with, does this have meaning for me in the context and horizon of time that matters to me, right? Ultimately, I think everything you do is for yourself. And that might sound very narcissistic, but that's how I look at choices we make. If you're not fulfilled by your work, you're not happy, you can't bring your best self. So I try to be very cognizant of that. That comes from, my structures in life, my morning meditation, my focus on healthy living, which is more than simply fitness, my focus on doing things outside of work that also give me a lot of sense of meaning, purpose, joy. Who's Vani Kola is really more about me every day trying to be my better self.
Vani, what were some choices you made as a young adult, some experiences, some learnings you went through in your formative years that have brought you here with so much clarity and so much self-awareness about yourself?
It's a question all of us reflect and look back, and things that seemed inconsequential at the moment, they're not pivotal in that moment, but they may have significant trajectory to your life. I was very good at math. I was encouraged to dream that I could sort of pursue a career in a male-dominated world. I had a nurturing home environment that was always encouraging to be my best self. I had a school environment that was also equally feeding me that you can pick up challenges. Why not? You can do things that are unconventional. You can be what you aspire to be. So I'm grateful for that. I don't think I understood how important that is in that time and in that moment. So I was one among very few girls in that time and period in engineering in Osmania University in Hyderabad. And I was 16 when I entered my engineering school. So the willingness, the capacity, confidence to sort of be one, a few among many, to be the minority, to make choices that are right for you, even if they are not conventional, was not difficult for me, right? But that small steps had huge rewards and huge impact as life went on, right? Also, some of them may be bucketed as unconventional means risky, whatever, right? But that type of risk and challenge taking felt normal. But different people have different sense of normal. I think my normal was always to be a trailblazer, if I should use that word. I think the same journey led me as a young mother to not think that hard about jumping in to start a new company,
Sure.
which I did, right, at about 30, right? And in around 41 or so, I moved back to India, which also for a lot of people, they would ask me, how could you make such a risky decision? But the fact is, I did not see it as a risky decision. I saw it as a adventure. I saw it as a learning experience. I saw it as something that can be hugely challenging in a way that could be motivating and testing, but in a fulfilled way. So I think the principles of pushing yourself to challenges without worrying that this is calculating the risk, right? But looking at the upside and looking at the positive. I'm just grateful that that was sort of the gifts. So I think it was just the confidence and the conviction to listen to
pursue your dreams.
Yeah, pursue your dreams, listen to your intuition, be prepared for accepting setbacks. And those can be qualities that are nurtured, that continue to multiply fruit for you year after year after year.
Yes. Now I know you help other entrepreneurs, but tell me a bit about how life was when you were an entrepreneur. I think you set up 2 companies. How did that journey pan out?
I had very rapid, fast-track learning, which every founder has to go through. But I started out with a vision of a product and something that I was deeply convinced that I wanted to do, right? To prove something to myself that I could do it. I had a young daughter at that time, and I think I was in the middle of fundraising for my company and a road show. In between, I had the second daughter. Don't assume that any of us are this superwoman and I can do it all. And I think we can kind of bury ourselves with such impossible expectations. So I asked for support networks. I self-created support networks. You know, hard to describe it and put it into words, the daily sort of split decisions that you make. But you know what? You become a better leader for it. Sure. You understand how to be multitask. You cannot do it unless you are super, super organized, unless you get time management down to a algorithm. I think the entrepreneurial journey was, there are so many analogies to it, drinking from a fire hose or, you know, being an extreme athlete. It's intense. But for me, I think the most important part of that journey was really realizing how many of the walls are inside us. You know, we almost have an unlimited capacity to underestimate ourselves, I feel, you know. And I think we don't put ourselves into situations where we can pull our reserves and what we are truly capable of, right? So it's again a journey of self-discovery, and in that sense it's very spiritual for me. So in that sense, it's probably a phase of life that was very liberating to discover that I don't have to be defined by, you know, a box of any shape. Of course, the companies were successful, investors made money, I made money. That's all incidental. You know.
The learnings are important.
Yeah, the learnings and how they fuel your life
Sure.
are important. But also it's a test of your values. There are many temptations in the path of entrepreneurship. Either people are feeding your ego, you're so great, you're a trailblazer, you know, pathbreaker. I think, you know, we see that a lot in media. It's very easy to get drawn to the lights. It's not that that's not good, but you have to
Keep your feet to the ground.
very clear, right? And common sense, you know. And I remember towards second half of 1999, the world, at least in the context of Silicon Valley and internet,
The
was a
dot-com
beautiful,
bubble.
well, before the bubble, I've seen 5 bubbles so far in my life. Wow. So, and the up doesn't excite me, the down doesn't depress me. But I remember people saying, you could be a $5 billion company. I was like, really? We have 50 million in revenue and it's great, right? So when we had an opportunity to sell the company for 1.2 billion, which in 2000 had a different sort of magnitude to it, aura to it, then today, for me, it felt like a good deal. And people were like, oh, you could get more. But my common sense as a founder and a CEO was like, well, that's just a bubble, and do you play the bubble, right? We were very fortunate that I made that decision. So I've always been fortunately grounded in some sense of, practicality. The same companies were 90%, 80% down in value. Nothing changed. So as a founder, it's really important to know that those are bright lights, they are beautiful, but they also go away. Something that's very easy to lose sight of. And real character gets defined and built when you face those setbacks. What do you do? How do you handle relationships? How do you handle yourself, right? The better or worse of you manifests when you face the setbacks. So what entrepreneurship does is it's like a test of fire, of figuring that out about yourself. So if you're really mindful of your compass, you have created networks, support systems, processes, practices that allow you to be reflective, I think you can escape the lure of the excess, because if you're going to build a company for a decade or 2 decades, you are going to have the highs and you are going to have the lows. You have to sort of be able to find your footing in both, right?
Yes.
I think that has taught me a lot. And that is how I define my entrepreneurship journey, to say there were highs and I enjoyed them very much, but they never unmoved me from who I really choose to be.
Sure.
And the lows allowed me to learn that I am made of substance.
That's interesting, Vani, because I think it's these learnings and the way you navigated the ups and downs that defined your journey as an entrepreneur. And I think this also translates into how you interact with entrepreneurs in your new avatar as an investor. Tell me a bit about how the idea for building Kalaari Capital came about in 2006.
In 2005, I was still living in the valley. And I'd sold my second company. And for the first time in a long time, probably in over 2 decades, I was bit at loose ends on what's next. On a side note, the one great decision I made at that time is I put a moratorium of time. I said for 6 months, I will not make big life decisions, right? I want to use this pause moment that life has offered me to really think deeply. And I did many things, do solo travel, which I'd never done till then. You can only be firefighting so much, and you can burn out if you don't give yourself the chance to rethink, reconnect with your vision. So when I started at the beginning of that 6-month period, I had no idea or notion that I would make such a big decision to come to India. So in that 6-month period, I did come to India, but more as a learner. Of course, I had been away by then for 22 years or so, but I wanted to really reconnect with India. So I spent a month just traveling mindlessly, talking to people in a mall or, the taxi driver, or just visiting a village, or doing all these things. I wanted to see what is India today? And it was like a new country to me. It was like a magical draw. I hadn't expected it. So I went back and I said to my husband, I think we should move to India. And he thought, we all make silly statements at home. He just didn't even pay attention to it. And I think over a week I kept thinking this and talking it through. And my conviction became stronger and stronger that this is a very different India. And if I don't participate in it, India will be fine, but I will miss out. My entrepreneurial fervor, if you want to call it, or my entrepreneurial bone, I was drawn to India. I said, there is a chance here. So we made a very quick decision actually, within a couple of months, that we were going to do this. And I moved kids, dog, everything by June of 2006. Wow. So that sort of was a very rapid decision, and then we set up the fund and all of that. The name Kalaari itself comes from Kalaari Capital, which is a martial arts form from the southernmost part of India, Kerala, and it is a beautiful art form which to me also represents many of the traits and entrepreneurial qualities of commitment, strength, persistence, perseverance, and so forth. I wanted the firm to represent Pride India. So if you see our office where we are sitting,
yes. I love the artwork.
It's a very Indian design language, and I love Indian design, Indian architecture, Indian art, and history. So I wanted to draw from that heritage. The past is always a link to the future.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and I kind of wanted to pay a little bit of a homage to the what we have inherited as a past, hence the name Kalaari, and hence, really engaging in exploring the Indian idiom in our office and everything that we do.
You've seen ups and downs, you've seen 5 bubbles, as you said. During that time, how did you go about raising funds? And if you can take us through some of the first investments during that period.
I've always believed, Neha, the biggest assets you have is not the money in your bank, your credibility, your reputation, what you stand for consistently. And raising the fund was relatively easy because we had a established credibility, reputation. Relationships are also big assets in your bank, right? These help you navigate your highs, but more importantly, they help you navigate your lows. But in our case, raising the fund was relatively easy because we raised it in North America, we had invested into those relationships, we had built and earned credibility and respect. So trust in us was something we could draw from the bank. But some of this I knew, that I have a few unfair advantages, which is get access at least. So there were a lot of people that were willing to give their inputs, give their ideas, encourage. So I tried to study what is it, where is it disruption can happen. And somewhere, we started picking up new themes, whether that was e-commerce or gaming, which weren't really getting early air cover from more traditional investment firms that were in India. And you can call it a leap of faith or a deep conviction. But we started taking early bets into that. I enjoy working with early stage companies and really knowing the founders at the beginning of their journey and all the possibilities it represents, and I think we are good at being an investor, a mentor at that phase of a company's life. They have access to different resources when they are a growth company or going to be a public company and so forth. The early stage, I think, is where maximum failure happens and also maximum
Value creation happens.
value creation happens. So this is what interests me a lot, and so we have always stayed true to that, that we will be an early stage investor,
Yes.
right? So it's also our own success or failure continuously to reimagine what is next, right?
Absolutely.
And you don't get it 10 on 10 because none of us have some crystal ball to be right all the time. So it's also a job that's humbling because you're going to be wrong enough number of times and you have to keep learning. It keeps you on the edge. We learn through the entrepreneurs. We learn through, understanding what's happening in, social behaviors, what are the big trends and so forth. I think we were early investors into Snapdeal, Myntra,
Yes.
Dream11, Via, Simply Learn, many companies that fortunately for us have created great returns for our fund. That's another thing that has always been important to me, coming from a very conservative middle class family. Sense of money and its value is very intimate to me. Money is a means to an end. It's not the end itself, but also money brings responsibilities and obligations, okay? Yes. Investors who trust in us, right? Could be pension funds, could be a bank, could be a family.
HNIs.
Yeah, or HNI, but they've worked hard to make their money. Yes. So, money is a circular economy. Why we have these bubbles and bull and bear is when this gets out of sync, you have to resync them. All money has to be multiplied.
Sure.
That's the core principle of economics,
Yes.
right? So for us, returning money back to our investors is a matter of pride, and not just a matter of pride, it's a deep obligation and responsibility. So, and we have always wanted to be measured on global terms because money flows globally today. So you can't just be, this is good enough for India. Why should it be good enough for India? It should be good enough for the world. So we've always wanted to be, can we create, par returns globally? And fortunately, our hard work of our founders and what they've enabled us to do, we have consistently been able to return 3 to 5x of our funds, which puts us, I think, in the top quartile in the world, and I'm truly grateful for that.
When you set up this fund, what were some challenges you initially faced?
I come from a technology product engineering background.
Yes.
And initially I had some misconceptions that, we can do India to global. So everything I had in terms of my US network and experience was useless because Indian companies weren't rapidly going global at that point. My technology knowledge and experience was useless because there were not that many deep tech companies at that time, which is also something that's happening today. And I'm really happy about those things and the opportunity that it represents for India in the long term. Coming to India and then what to invest in India, I knew would be a lot of unlearning, because we bring certain knowledge, but knowledge is ever changing. Knowledge that is sort of fossilized is of no use. Knowledge is new every day. So it's always important to be a learner, which means it involves also unlearning something, right? And I knew I was new in India, that I should not bring so many assumptions of what works or doesn't work from just my experience, right? Yes. They're important, but only as they are relevant. You didn't know what was the true potential of India. I think sitting in 2006, we couldn't have said, 2022, we would be a startup nation and we would be the bright spot in the world with respect to the economy. We would be saying the future of India 2047 is a 40 trillion economy. And I think the next 25 years is really just very exciting times that we are fortunate to be born, and hence we have to make good of it, you know. It's not just,
Sure.
luck, right? There's a purpose to why we are here today in this place, in this moment, right? So I'm very optimistic and enthused for also the future of what opportunity represents in India as an equalizer. Of course, opportunity is not just about a startup and a founder and the global investors, but ultimately technology, if it isn't creating value for humanity, any startup or value creation doesn't equalize socially, it cannot be sustained.
Absolutely.
Right? So the middle class has to rise. We need, of the, let's say, 1.5 billion people, a certain parity of access and opportunity and, life expectancy to be created. And if technology and economic engine doesn't do that, then we have failed.
We continue our discussion with Vani Kola in the second part of this conversation. We talk about governance, the game of valuations, and Kalaari Capital's investment philosophy. Don't miss the rapid fire round. Stay tuned for part 2.